Now, as woodworkers, we are eventually going to make mistakes. Today's video is about how I mentally process a mistake so I avoid making it worse. This is not the video for here's exactly how to fix whatever mistake you have. There will be a future video. I'm actually looking for more ideas on mistakes that I can then show how to fix if I know how. So if you have any ideas of common mistakes, please let me know. The impetus for this video was that not long ago I was making a wedding gift and I'd left it till the last minute. I was in a panic, I had to get it done. And I made a mistake and I totally forgot my entire process and I made that mistake way worse. I want to talk today about what I should have done, what I normally do when I'm not under a time crunch, and then show you just how bad that mistake became. So this mistake involved me making a recipe card box. I'd prototyped the box, I knew exactly what I was doing. I was so close to the end, I had the lid, it's going to be a flip up lid, some little hinges on top. I'm going to apply the hinges. I put a screw in, I'm screwing it in. I went cheap with the hinges and it snapped off. Inside the lid in a very visible spot is the screw. I am panicking. I've only got 2 days left and one of those days is for finish to dry. This is not good. It was a family member's wedding, so kind of important. And I just panicked. I should have drilled it out. I should have been very delicate. Heck, there was probably a million ways I could have fixed it in the moment. But what did I do instead? My brain totally fried out. And I decided, I said, well, this is a tiny screw. I just need to remove this little area of wood. I grabbed the 1/4 inch plug cutter and I stuck it down in there. And instead of drilling out the screw, I removed this gigantic spot in the top of the lid. Now, obviously you can see this is significantly worse than a small screw being broken off in there. And it went from a mistake that I probably could have fixed by carefully drilling it out and, little patch here and there to a fatal mistake. So fortunately I had more wood. I was able to quickly make another piece, but I went from fixable mistake to absolutely fatal. There's no way to fix this mistake. And here is instead what I should have done. The first thing I always do is I assess the mistake and I quickly write notes so that I can get some thoughts out of my head before I walk away. So if the mistake is fixable, if it's fatal, that just happens. Sometimes it's fatal, you've got to grab a different piece, but this is for fixable-ish mistakes. I assess it. What did I do wrong? What is the problem here? And I take notes and I write them down. I even write down any kind of quick ideas of how to fix the mistake. I'm not going to do it in the moment. I want to have some cool down time to make sure those ideas make sense, unlike using a plug cutter to try to get a small screw out of a piece of wood. So I write those mistakes down. I've got the notes. I have it in my mind. I get it out of my mind. I then set the workpiece aside. There's always more we can do, and we'll talk about what I do. I set it out. I don't want to have to look at it over and over. Now, if it's a giant table or something, you may not be able to move it out of the way. But if it's something that you can move out of your line of sight, do that as soon as you get all the thoughts out of your head onto paper so that you can decompress a little bit and not obsess over it. Now that I've set this aside and it's no longer in my sight, it's no longer in my vision, I need to do something else to help keep it out of my mind. There are two things I do. I always either put a podcast on or some music on, but it's something that kind of I want to listen to and maybe pay a little more attention to. When I'm woodworking, I'm always listening to something, but it's often not something that's going to take my focus away. So I'm not going to listen to a history podcast that I'm really interested in because I'm not going to kind of take it in if I'm actually woodworking. So at this point, I do put something like that on, something that's going to get my thoughts going on a different topic, and I will grab some scrap wood. It doesn't matter what it is, often pine, 2x4, some scraps of trees I've milled, and I will practice with a hand tool. I will grab the saw, the chisel, whatever. I prefer to use a hand tool here. If you're gonna use a power tool, make sure it's something relatively small, easy to control. I wanna get better at something I am not great at, but also something that I can just kind of mess around. I've gotten a lot better at cutting straight-ish lines with these pull saws because I've made a lot of mistakes and I have a lot of time to therefore practice. I'll set this up in a little fake vise thing and I'll just practice making some cross cuts or some rip cuts, resaws, whatever. And I'll do that for about 30 minutes. I'm able to gain experience with doing something that I normally am not great at. I'm able to not think about that. And I'm using usually a hand tool so that I can listen to something and also not have too much danger going on. Recently, I've been practicing a little bit with the multi-tool because it's new and I know I need to figure out how to use it well for the time I actually need to use it for something important. So a little bit of that, but that's arguably the first power tool in a long time. For a while, I was practicing with the router plane until I got a lot better with that. Hand tools mainly I think are the best option for this, but that's up to you. There are other things you can do during that cool down time if you either don't have scrap wood or you just don't want to do any like woodworking at the moment. Clean your tools. Put some new paste wax on top of a surface. Use your, whatever you use, a square, a dial indicator to check your table saw fence, to check any fence, bandsaw, router fence, whatever it is for square. My table saw needs lubrication once or so a year. Sometimes if I don't remember the last time I did something, it's not a bad time to do it. I clean it off first and then apply new so it's not like I'm adding too much on top. You can do things like double checking that the bearings on your bandsaw are set the right distance away so that you get the optimal cut the next time you use it. If you've got a dust collector and this thing is filling up, this is a great time to empty this out. It's going to take you a whole half hour to get this thing back on there, so it's a great way to spend that entire time. And if none of those things interest you at all, there is always a hand tool somewhere that needs to be sharpened. This is a great time to sharpen something. I always am lazy with sharpening my hand plane, so this is a perfect time for me to get a fresh edge on it. I'm a lot better with my chisels, but if you haven't sharpened something in a while and you need to use this cool down time, grab anything, grab everything if you haven't sharpened things in a while. Heck, go grab some kitchen knives and sharpen them if you need to. Another great way to get your mind off of the mistake and onto something else. So at the end of that 30 minutes or the next day or whatever it is, this is all out of the way. I bring my notes back and I look at my notes again. I grab my workpiece after reading through my notes and I'm going to go back and I'm going to re-diagnose this. I'm going to make sure that in the moment of panic, I didn't miss something. I want to know again what exactly is the mistake. Is it actually fixable? Is it fatal? Is it actually nowhere near as bad as I thought and I was just panicking? So I re-diagnose the mistake and I read through my notes and I'm thinking, are these good solutions? Is this going to fix it? Is there something new I can think of? Can I get on the laptop, Google around, see if I can find something? This is just a better time once we're calmed down to do a little extra diagnosing and thinking of how we're going to fix the mistake. Once we've gone through our kind of research phase, we've thought about the mistake again, how we're going to fix it, there are really two ways to go forward here. The first is to fix it, or perhaps you realize it is kind of fatal. And at that point, you have to decide, am I giving up on this project in general? Is it such a fatal thing that it's just not worth carrying on altogether? That sometimes happens where a big section of it has been just wrecked and you've got to start over or move on to something else. At that point, I then decide, can I take wood from this thing to use for something else? I don't usually do that in the moment because, again, it's never bad to decompress a little more. If it's possible, I'll set it aside, but I kind of leave a sticky note on it usually to just remind myself to think about cutting this into pieces essentially. Like this, for example, I still have this. I'm going to eventually use this for something else. I'm not going to throw this away. It's a perfectly good piece of walnut other than this gigantic hole in it. But at that point, I now have a clear head. I can go about fixing my mistake. In this case, this was fatal. I had to just grab a different piece of wood and continue from there. Had I followed my process, I would have just drilled out that little screw, plugged it with a little dowel, a very tiny little dowel, and then re-drilled for the hinges and did that again. I panicked, I didn't follow my list, and that led me to a significantly worse problem. Hopefully that helps. If you've got any other tips for how to kind of decompress after making a mistake, then diagnosing that mistake, the mental aspect of it. Like I said, there will be a future video on fixing mistakes specifically. If you can give me an idea of some, I'm trying to come up with a list long enough to make the video worth watching. So let me know. All right, bye. And good luck. Don't give up. It's possible to fix most mistakes. Bye.